Good day and welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 here at WEDCOnomics. I'm Jack Terrill. I'm the Executive Director of Wentworth Economic Development Corporation, and our mission is to advise, finance, and promote small business in the Eastern Lakes region of New Hampshire. And we do this podcast so that we can shine light on small business in general and the people that are involved in that very crucial part of our economy. And we have a very special guest today. His name is Roger Plante. Roger, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Jack. Thanks for having me.
I'll bet you a lot of you folks out there know Roger because Roger was involved for many years in the Tri-City automobile franchise, which includes Tri-City Dodge and, of course, Tri-City Subaru. And anybody who drives around Wolfeboro can tell you about Tri-City Subaru. You seem to own the town. It's incredible the number of Subarus that are here in Wolfeboro.
That's how I found out about Wolfeboro. I didn't know Wolfeboro existed until I sold my first car in town, and
now you reside here.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I wanted to talk. In the end, you and your siblings sold Tri-City Dodge and Tri-City Subaru. And when it was time to sell, I'm not sure it would be classified as a small business, but at one point, it started as a small business.
It started pretty small, yeah.
So I'd like to...
it started with just the Dodge franchise.
Well, can you take us back to the beginning when your father got things rolling?
Sure. Well, actually, it started with my grandfather, and he
did?
Yeah. Well, he was in the car business during the war, the big war, and of course, cars were out of production. Vehicles were out of production.
Was he in business in Somersworth or in that area?
Well, it was actually in Dover, Central Auto Body.
That was your grandfather's.
That was my grandfather's, and my dad worked there. And at the time, they weren't producing vehicles, and they weren't producing parts for vehicles. So if you had a talent for taking wrecked vehicles and putting them back together, you had a job. So that's how my dad started, and then he ended up buying wrecked cars, fixing them, and selling them. And he determined that was going to be his direction, and he started a used car store.
In Somersworth?
That one was in Somersworth with a partner, yeah.
And so he left your grandfather's work.
Yeah.
And so he started buying wrecked cars, rebuilding them.
Yeah.
Was he a mechanic?
No, he was good with the body work.
He was good with the body
he had
work.
mechanics that would help him with the mechanical stuff. He was good with shaping the metal because, you couldn't buy parts. So he had to take the bent metal, take it off, reshape it, put it back on.
What was the name of that store?
That was, it was Central Auto Body. Then my dad's place was called Midway Motor Sales because it was midway between Somersworth and Rochester.
All right, so children came along, you came along, and was it still Midway Motor at that time?
It was Midway Motors, and then him and his partner split up in 1965 because they each got a separate new car franchise. My dad's partner got Buick, and my dad got Dodge.
This is something they applied for.
Yep.
So he changed his direction a little bit where maybe still fix up wrecked cars, but we're going to get
by the point
franchise.
where they got the franchise, he wasn't really fixing them anymore. He was just buying and selling used cars.
Okay.
Because by then the war was over, and you could buy new cars, and you could get parts and whatnot.
So that was 1965.
1965 is when he got the Dodge franchise.
Was it called Tri-City Dodge?
It was from its inception called Tri-City Dodge for Dover, Somersworth, Rochester.
And
Clever.
Wolfeboro later. Okay.
So they bought a new piece of land.
Yeah.
And that's where they put the Dodge store when it
was
started.
It on Route 16?
It was on. It was Route 16 at the time. Now it's 108, but at the time it was Route 16. And it was just a very small showroom, one office, and a 2-bay service facility.
Your dad was running it.
Mm-hmm.
Did he have a partner in that? Or?
He didn't have a partner in it, but he had a staff. Obviously, he had some people selling cars for him, and he had some mechanics on staff.
So, 1965, you were roughly 6 years old.
Correct.
At what point did you become or take an interest in the business? Or
Well, I mean, I just loved cars right from the beginning. I used to surprise him because we'd be going down the road and I would be pointing out cars and I would be telling him what kind of car it was and what year it was when I was 7 years old.
Is that right?
Yeah. And he would come home for lunch because we lived not far away when this was at Midway Motor Sales. And I would just love it when he'd let me go to the store with him. He would, some afternoons he'd take me to work with him, in the summer months when I didn't have school. So I always loved being around the cars and just being in the business. And it was just in my blood from an early age, I guess I'd say.
And then you took a more official role as you entered your teen years, or?
Well, I worked after school. I went to the Dodge store after school, and I was working cleaning cars. That's how I originally started.
Yeah.
Then I did some work in the shop doing oil changes and stuff. They were smart enough to not give me anything too complicated. They let me change oil and flip tires around was pretty much it.
Yeah.
And that is what I did until I graduated from high school.
Yeah. And then you went full time.
Yeah, it was. I always figured that I was going to end up in the business. It was sort of, he wanted me to, and I wanted to, and that's what I did.
So you had other siblings, 3 brothers and a sister, I believe. And was there an expectation that they would follow into the business, or was everybody kind of on their own? Because a couple did.
Well, my immediate older brother, yes, he was a lot like me. It was always going to be like that from the beginning. I'm the middle of the 3. My younger brother, not so much. He went to college for business, and then he wasn't sure what he was going to do. He decided to go in and see if he liked it, and he ended up staying. So that's how it ended up being 3 of us.
But it essentially was each child's choice if they were going to
sure,
get involved
absolutely.
or not. Or...
My oldest brother did get involved with the car business early on and then just decided it wasn't for him. So he went in a different direction.
Yeah.
And my sister did not ever go in the car business.
So when you sort of entered in full time, it was still just Tri-City Dodge, is that correct?
Well, actually, it was still Tri-City Dodge, but we had secured the Subaru franchise and we had to build a new building. So the first day that Subaru was open, the first month was November of 1977, which is dovetailed with right when I had graduated school, and it was the fall, and that's when I started at the Subaru store full time, and I started in sales over there. I was a salesperson at the Subaru store.
Back then, the Subarus were a lot different than they are today.
Yes, they very much so.
Yeah.
When they first started, it was the '78 model year when we first got Subaru, and their claim to fame then was there was only two vehicles that you could buy that did not run on unleaded fuel. People loved the fact that they could buy regular leaded gasoline. So for the first 2 years that we had Subaru, that sort of gave them a foothold, and then Subaru discovered four-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, and of course, up with the climate we have up here, they're excellent for that. And that was really what really gave Subaru a foothold, particularly in the New England states.
Was the all-wheel drive.
The all-wheel drive's really what did it. Because you could get any body style with all-wheel drive.
That's interesting because I didn't know about the leaded fuel thing.
Yeah, yeah. And that ended in '79. '80 was the first year.
What was the other car maker that did leaded?
I think some of the Honda models.
Yeah.
I think it was Honda.
All right, so that dovetailed perfectly with your end of your high school and
Sure, yeah.
into the business world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, fast forward a little bit, not that we have to, but obviously Tri-City Subaru and Tri-City Dodge became very, very successful.
Well, our dad was very, very concentrated on customer service and making customers happy no matter what you had to do to make the customer happy. His belief was if you had to spend money to the point of even losing money to make a customer happy, that was the right way to run your business. And he was right. We used to get a lot of referral business. Our reputation in the community is as good as any dealer could have, because that's what we did.
And so you're attributing the success to that sort of philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it carried on after your father passed. And,
Yeah.
And you would what other factors can you identify as when your father passed away, you became
Well, before he had sort of more or less retired
okay.
for about 8 years prior to when he passed, and he would come in and chat with us, but he was pretty much retired at that point, and so he allowed us to run things. He was the general manager. He made the major decisions, but the day-to-day operations were done by us. Of the three brothers, we each had our own expertise. Mine was sales. My older brother was service, and then the younger brother that I mentioned, his was business. So he was involved with the bookkeeping and
Right.
budgeting and all that sort of thing. So
That's
that
sort of
worked
the
out well.
the three-headed monster there,
Exactly.
because those are three very
Well, those are the keys.
right?
But we found that in a lot of cases, when siblings take over a business, it doesn't always go well because there's a lot of
Right.
butting of heads. But I think the fact that we each had our own role, our own expertise, and that we would respectfully ask each other's opinion about a certain thing, if it wasn't their area of expertise, I think that was one of the main reasons we were able to succeed and thrive for as many years as we did.
Yeah, I'm sure it presented challenges.
Yeah, my dad passed in 1994.
1994. And you sold in what year?
Well, it was
20
the pandemic. It was just around the time of the pandemic is
Yeah.
when we sold. We had actually struck a deal just prior to it, and then we closed after the pandemic hit, which was a whole different bunch of challenges.
So you sort of had the experience of working there as an employee, and you also had experience working there as an owner. Was that fair to say?
Well, there was a long stretch, but before I was actually an owner, I was one of the managers in sales.
So employee,
Because we
manager,
didn't become
ownership.
owners till my dad passed.
Right.
Because it was passed over to us.
Yeah. So I'm curious about the difference. Maybe there was no difference, but when you went into work as an owner versus when you went into work as a manager versus when you went into work as an employee.
Well, I wanted to make it so that I was very team oriented, and I didn't want to. I mean, I don't know how to word this. I wanted to be on the team. I didn't want to be like I'm the owner and everybody was below me. I used to get input from my staff. For example, we'd have snowstorms and we'd have to go in and do cleaning. And I was always the first one there, and I was always working out, doing it, and other employees would say, "What are you doing out here? This is not, the owners don't do this stuff." It was just the way we did it. We were just all a team. And, that allowed us to keep employees for a long time. We had, when we sold the dealership, we had many employees that had been with us for over 30 years.
So let's just talk about that for a second. How important was that in the recipe for success?
I think it's a huge, huge part of the puzzle. Huge part of the puzzle. If you make your employees feel they're part of a team, and they're rewarded, and they are respected and appreciated, I think that makes a huge difference. Then those folks will recommend us to their family. Our employees' families would all come in, and then their family's family. So it worked out very well for us.
Sort of like the Grateful Dead allowing taping at their shows.
I guess. It might be a little leap.
No, that's a great recipe for success, and it's very organic in its growth, and therefore more likely to sustain.
Yeah.
Instead of the one-hit
Yeah, exactly.
deal. I mean, how many, we talk about you have employees or had employees that stayed over 30 years, which is awesome and amazing.
I mean, some are still there now. We sold the store 3 years ago, and
Yeah.
some are still there now.
But you also had some incredibly loyal customers.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Some of my most loyal customers are from Wolfeboro. I don't want to name names, but there are families in Wolfeboro I've sold 20, 30 cars to over the years, to all their kids and
Is that right?
friends. And
Yeah.
sure.
Well, that in itself would lend to great success.
Some of them
How
still
it-
call me now. It's like, you remember that I retired, right? Yeah, but can you call somebody for me?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you, what do you attribute that sort of loyalty from these customers?
I think it all goes back to my dad's original philosophy.
Yeah.
We would make people happy, whatever it took.
It also
And,
helped.
and this is before a lot of dealers sort of reluctantly do that now because they sort of feel like they have to because of the internet and social media. It's like the sort of Damocles hanging over them, if they don't take care. Well, this was way before that we had that philosophy.
As we did move into that sort of social media age and smartphones, and what kind of impact did that have on the business for you guys?
You have to embrace it. It in a way, it was sort of scary because it was like a new thing. But you got to look at it this way. Let's say you have an unusual vehicle that people would travel, a used vehicle that is unusual and rare and would be desirable. Well, in the old days before the internet, all you could do was park it on your front line and wait for somebody to drive by and see it. When the internet came along and you had websites and you were posted online, now your car was available to anybody across the country. So we'd start getting, if we had an unusual vehicles, we'd get calls from Texas and Florida and Wyoming, and people would ship them. So you have to embrace it. You can't be afraid of it. You got to embrace the new technologies.
But people were able to kind of shop online amongst different dealers.
Well, that's obviously the downside of it is it was much more competitive at that point. So we found our profit per unit went down, but that we were selling more units. So
You were selling more units, so
Yeah.
more volume.
yeah.
And how did that affect the service side of the business? Because at some point, or I don't know because I'm not in the business, but was service at some point considered sort of we got to do it, and then it became more of we want to do it?
No, service is a good provider of profit for your business if you do it properly. A well-run dealership, basically, the service should cover all your expenses, and sales is the gravy, for lack of a better term.
Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Your service. Service. You. That's where. I know a lot of places survived with service when the pandemic hit and you couldn't get vehicles. If it wasn't for service, what would they have done?
Right.
And then, of course, you had people who couldn't replace a car cost effectively, so they would go to the service to patch it up.
Yeah.
So, service is not something you have to do. It's something you should absolutely, in the car business anyway, approach it as a profit center and a way to get new customers.
Very interesting. So, part of your role in the business was to procure cars, correct?
Well, later on, after, because I was the manager at Subaru, then when I was the owner, I had other things to deal with other than just sales. So I hired a sales manager. So he took care of a lot of the things I used to take care of, and that freed me up to get more involved in the used cars. So towards the end, for the last, say, 10 to 15 years that I was there, that's really what my role was, and it was for both the Dodge and the Subaru stores, is determining which used car trade-ins we would resell, what we had to do to resell them, what sort of reconditioning they needed. Cars that were basically lost causes, I would just take them to auction or sell them to wholesalers. I had some connections that had used car stores around, and I would sell them to them, and then it would be their thing to fix up and sell.
Would you actually get cars from auctions?
Sure. Yeah. I wouldn't want to buy older vehicles from auctions because I always felt that if the dealer took this car to the auction, it's the same reason why I took a car to the auction.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something I would want.
Right.
It would go to Joe Blow's used cars on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
But I would buy off-lease cars that were still, relatively new, probably 3 years or younger, with reasonable miles. And we had access to off-lease vehicles through Chrysler Credit and through Subaru Financial. Because you're a franchise dealer, you get first shot at them. So I used to buy vehicles. We would send drivers after them, pick them back to the dealership, bring them back to the dealership, fix them up, and sell them.
Is it true that selling used cars is more lucrative than selling new cars?
It depends on the market climate at the time. And I keep going back to the pandemic, and I guess I do because it was such an unusual circumstance. When that happened, you couldn't get new cars, so used car profits, they just went through the roof because of supply and demand. But then there are other times where it depends on the new car. If it's a new car that's readily accessible, you're not going to make much money on it. You just want to get a customer. If it's an unusual vehicle that there's not many of them around, you might not give much of a discount. You might just sell it for the sticker price. That's another point. Is a lot of dealers in those times when cars were hard to get, a lot of dealers took that opportunity to gouge the buyer. They actually put additional stickers asking more than the MSRP for vehicles. That is something we never, ever, ever did.
Yeah.
Right? We always figured at the end of the day, and it goes back to that original philosophy, sure, you'll make a big profit on that one vehicle, but you're probably never going to get that customer in again. He's going to say, oh yeah, that guy made me pay too much for the car I wanted. And so we never did that.
Sometimes the dealerships or the car makes, they have their ups and downs.
Sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
They really hit with a design, or they really miss with a design.
Well, and of course, a given car will get stale. If it's been on the market for 4 or 5 years, everybody that wants that car has probably already bought one. So it's going to trail off. They're not going to sell as many until a replacement comes out for it. And then that'll be the hot car for a few years.
As an owner, right, you're cheering on the maker because you want them to hit home runs.
Sure.
Because that makes your life that much easier.
Yeah. I mean, if you have something that the market is hot on, that's good. You're going to get more customers.
Yeah. How would you rate Subaru as from their entry into the market to where they are today?
Mm-hmm. How would I rate them?
Just
think
how
about
they grew as a company. I mean,
well, one thing about Subaru that's unique is there's a separate distributor for the Subaru brand in all of the New England states. And he's a well-known person. I won't say him by name, but he is actually the distributor. So the Subarus that get sold in New Hampshire, all the New England states, they pass through his hands. Well, he was very much, when he got involved with Subaru, they were a very small manufacturer, and he made a huge decision that even the parent company didn't agree with, but because he was buying so many Subarus they had to go along with, he didn't allow anybody that wanted a Subaru franchise to dual it with another brand. So, for example, if you had a Pontiac store, he was not going to let you put Subarus in the Pontiac showroom. If you wanted a Subarus, you had to build a new building, a standalone building, which was unheard of because of the small volume Subaru was doing at the time nationally. Very big sales in New England because of the snow and the four-wheel drive, but that was a major thing, and that really boosted their image in New England, is having separate stores.
So that was a visionary.
Very visionary. At the time, there was a lot of grumbling, and he just said, hey, if you don't want it, don't get it. But if you want to get it, you're going to have to build a building, which is what we did. We happened to have a chunk of land there available to us, so we built a building. And
in full disclosure, I've owned Subarus for a long time.
Where'd you get them?
Some guy named Roger, one of the loyal customers. I don't know how many I've had, probably 13 or 14. But I'll tell you, I lived 10 years in Florida, right? And I'm saying, well, great, I'm going to move to Florida in a Subaru. Guess what? I was so happy I had a Subaru in Florida because when it rains in Florida, it pours.
It pours, yeah.
And you are so happy you have that all-wheel drive.
Yeah, and if it hasn't rained in a week or so, the roads get a little film of oil,
greasy.
sort of.
Yeah.
And then when you get a hard rain, you could definitely be hydroplaning all over the place.
Yeah, so it was.
And there's a lot of snowbirds that have Subarus down there. They drive their Subarus down from the cold climates down to Florida.
But I swear, when I moved down there, and I was there for 10 years, Subaru really took off down there.
Oh yeah, they're pretty big right now down there.
Yeah, I mean, big dealerships.
Well, the other thing with Subaru, it's not just the four-wheel drive; it's also the reliability. They're extremely reliable.
They're safe.
The other big part of the puzzle is very safe. I was just going to say they have 5-star safety rated. All their vehicles are 5-star safety rated. I think they're still the only manufacturer that can say that. Every vehicle they sell is 5-star safety rated.
And how's Dodge doing?
Dodge is great. Dodge has a lot of success with the Ram trucks. It's actually, I should clarify that, it's not Tri-City Dodge, it's Tri-City Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram. Chrysler is very small volume, they just have that little minivan.
That's all they're doing now?
That's all they're doing.
What about the 300? No more 300?
The 300 has gone away.
No kidding.
Well, that's been in production for 15 years. That's a very long run.
Wow.
That's actually a vehicle that started when, for a very short time, Mercedes-Benz bought Chrysler. And proceeded to run it into the ground.
Really?
Yeah, because they wanted to Germanize it. They made a big error. They shouldn't have bought it if they wanted to Germanize it. They should have just infused it with capital and leave them alone. But the Chrysler was actually underpinned by a Mercedes E-Series. The platform was actually the previous generation Mercedes E platform. So it was a very good basis for the vehicle, you know. But yeah, that's gone away.
So Dodge, is Ram and Dodge considered separate? I mean,
yeah. Well, Dodge. It used to be called Dodge Trucks, right? It was a Dodge Ram. Then they dropped the Dodge name, so it's technically a different franchise. But you have to have it with the other ones. They don't allow you to just have a Ram franchise.
Yeah. And they're very successful. Right?
Yeah, Ram is the best truck you can buy. I do believe that.
Do you have one?
Matter of fact, I do. Coincidentally.
How did I know?
And then of course Jeep. Jeep is an icon. I mean, even people that aren't car people, when you see a Jeep.
So Dodge bought Jeep?
Well, Chrysler Corporation bought Jeep just before Mercedes bought Chrysler, and that's really why Mercedes wanted Chrysler, was because of Jeep, because Jeep's always been a high profit nameplate. You know, they had the Grand Cherokees.
It is iconic.
Yeah, and the Wranglers, of course, the Jeep Wrangler's iconic. I have she's like 2 years and 3 months, my little grandbaby, and she calls it Papa Jeep. I have a Jeep too, and she calls it Papa Jeep.
Oh yeah.
And she sees Jeeps driving around, and she goes, Papa Jeep, Papa Jeep.
Really?
Yeah. So it just shows you when a 2.5-year-old recognizes it instantly.
It might run in the blood there. So you're all retired now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And to you and your brothers.
I'm enjoying it. I think we worked hard for it, and I think we earned it. There was some reluctance. Myself and my older brother were ready to sell. My younger brother, not so much. It was a little nudging, but we got him to do it, and he's very happy now. We're all very happy. When it came time to sell, we actually had offers from other local dealers that wanted to buy it, and we actually had heard on the rumors about how they didn't treat their employees very well, so we didn't sell to them. We actually took less money to sell to somebody that we knew was a good person, and like I said, a lot of the same folks are still working there. I go in and visit, and yeah.
Well, that's great. It's great to hear a second generation success story, and it's also great to follow the path of a small business into a bigger business. And I think you hit on the points that you got to treat your people right, whether they be your customer or your employee.
Exactly.
You just got to treat people right, and
I will always come back to you.
yeah.
I will always
Yeah.
come back to you.
Hey, that was awesome. Guest Roger Plante from the Tri-City Auto franchise. You know it as Tri-City Subaru and Tri-City Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, and sold a few years ago, but certainly built a beautiful legacy. And congratulations.
Well, my
again.
son-in-law still works for them now, actually.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Thanks for coming on, Roger.
Sure, Jack. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate
It was fun.
it. And thank you, folks, for tuning in. And we'll
Thanks
see
for
you.
watching.
We'll see you on the next episode. Jack Terrill, Wentworth Economic Development Corporation. We'll see you next time.